So thank everybody for joining us tonight. We're on chapter 7 of the Lalitavistara Sutra, the birth. So to get us started, it's a long chapter. So to get us started, we'll do a short motivational prayers, opening prayers, and then we'll get into the discussion and the recitation of this chapter together. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent. I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent. I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chodam Shangshu baidu dagni kapsuchi Dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi Drola penshir sangye jupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pesam centam she dewadang dewe gurdang dempa jorchi. Dug now dang now gi gudang trawa jorchi. Dug now me pe de wa dang mi trawa jorchi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang trawe dang namla ne pa jorchi. Thank you very much. Does anybody, before we start, have any comments or questions about anything that we've been talking about up to this point? Okay, very good. So I would just like to, put a little bit of perspective on Lalitavistara Sutra by saying that, this is something that has been carried down for at least 2,000 years now, when this was first written down. And this particular translation is from a Tibetan translation that came from a translation that came around 200 or 300 years after the Buddha had passed away. So with these stories, and they're magnanimous stories with lots of colorful images and so on like that. And so there's myth that's involved with these stories. There's allegory. There's symbolism that's involved with these stories. There's metaphor that's involved with these stories. And there's a degree of wishful thinking that might be involved with these stories too. So the point is, to me anyway, is that, it speaks of the human culture of having these kinds of stories that speak of great beings and great events and great situations that these beings are rising up through and so on, coming through. And so is it worth investigating these stories, or do we say with our 21st century minds that we negate these things? These are ancient fairy tales. You know, these aren't worth looking at because they're not pertinent to today, and we shouldn't spend our time with these things. Or do we say that we should embrace these and look at these as hidden gems? That some of the metaphors, some of the allegories, some of the myths are like these gemstones that are full of simplicity, of bodhicitta, things that maybe we have missed, things maybe that we have kind of over, we've kind of pushed into the mud, so to speak. And this is part of what may be missing in our societies and what we're living in today, because we don't have these kinds of beautiful stories to look back to and so on, and begin to look at that these stories are actually stating great aspirations, are stating great intentions, are stating great fruitions of effort by beings who had nothing more than trying to help other beings out of their suffering. And this is, worthwhile, I think, to a lot of people. Some people would say, oh, we don't look at it that way. It's not worth that. But it's something to consider, something I'm bringing up because we're investigating these things. So should we look at the world, should we look at our situation now as this evil negativity that is bound in this direction, that is like a raging river or something like that, and there's very little that we can do about it? Or should we look at it that they're Buddha fields, and the Buddha fields are places for Buddhas to do their work among people who are suffering, among suffering beings? So whether it's hell realms or it's hungry ghost realms or it's animal realms, there's Buddhas in those Buddha fields. Those beings that are caught up in the suffering, they don't see it as Buddha fields, but the Buddhas there do. And does it become our work to be able to spread that, to be able to show that, to be able to demonstrate how, in spite of the suffering, that there is still an ability to be able to transcend that and to be able to help other beings? So with that in mind, this is the way in which I think that we should look at these sutras. And they're full of myths, as I say, but to look at that there's kernels of truth in there, there's kernels of reality in there, there's beauty in that, and that's what we should be looking for in this and seeing how we can apply that into our lives. Would anybody like to comment on that? Does that make sense, or do you have another way of being able to express that?
No, it doesn't. It does make sense. And, it's never a waste of time to study history. And when you look at history, it is very often in texts like this, because we don't, in our cultures, we think about things a certain way, but through most of human history, actually, a lot of the things that people talked about in terms of their own history and stored their philosophy and is more like this. The thing about studying history is you don't know what's useful until you see it. And you have to look at a lot of stuff in order for bigger patterns to make sense. Yeah, that's just what I'm thinking right off the bat.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to make a comment? Okay. Well, then we'll continue on. So, I'd like to read this as we've been doing, reciting this from beginning to end. So, like I said, it's a long chapter. So we'll read it, taking a page at a time, with each other. And as we kind of automatically did, if we get to the end of a page, but then there's a short couple sentences on the next page that follows that present page that we're on, we should continue with that. But if it's another paragraph or it's another longer paragraph, part of the paragraph or something, we should yield to the next reader, something like that. So I presume that everybody has a copy of the book or a copy of the text. Gavin, do you have a copy? Are you able to read tonight? And it's good to see you. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, will you be able to read, Gavin? Yep, okay. Bernie, you've got your Kindle or whatever? Okay, very good. And Matthew, I think you do and everybody else does, so very good. So if I can, let's establish a reading order. So if it's okay, Gary, why don't you start on this first page where it says Chapter 7, the birth. And then next would be Kunga, if you would start on the second page. And then Matt, would you start on the third page? And then Gavin, start on the fourth page after that. And then Debbie, if you'll read the page after that, I guess that's the fifth page. And then Bernie on the sixth page. And I'll read the seventh page. And we'll maintain that order. So if we get confused with the order, we'll just try and remind each other. But I think that's the best way to do this. Okay, so try and read with, and if somebody comes in late, like I know somebody might, we'll invite them to read and as the eighth person or the ninth person. So I'll just speak up and add them in so that they feel connected and so on and get the, try and read this as if you were reading to young children. My point in saying this is sometimes I think we tend to read it too fast. We're reading it to ourselves. And I think if we read it like we're reading to young children, maybe it'll slow things down and allow us to have a little bit more expression in the emphasis on certain words and phrases and points that are being made. Is that a fair request? Okay. So I may have to repeat that before this is over, but okay. So Gary, if you'll begin, please.
Monks. In this way, 10 months passed, and the time came for the Bodhisattva to take birth. At that time, 32 omens occurred in King Suddhodana's parks. All flowers budded and blossomed. In the ponds, all the blue, red, and white lotus flowers also budded and blossomed. New fruit and flower trees sprung from the earth, budded, and came into blossom. 8 trees of precious gems appeared. 20,000 great treasures emerged and remained on the grounds. Inside the women's quarters, jeweled shoots sprouted forth. Scented water, saturated with fragrant oils, flowed forth. Lion cubs descended from the snow mountains. They joyfully circled the sublime city of Kapilavastu, and then rested by the gates without harming anyone. 500 young white elephants arrived, stroking King Suddhodana's feet with the tips of their trunks, and then settling down next to him. Divine children wearing sashes were seen moving back and forth between the laps of the women and the retinue of King Suddhodana's queen. Naga girls could be seen holding aloft various offerings, revealing the upper half of their bodies as they moved about in the sky. 10,000 celestial maidens were seen hovering in the sky, holding up peacock feathers. 10,000 full vases appeared in a ring around the city of Kapilavastu. 10,000 celestial maidens appeared with vases of scented water on their heads. 10,000 celestial maidens appeared, holding up parasols, flags, and banners. Many hundreds of thousands of celestial maidens appeared, holding conch shells, drums, clay drums, and cymbals adorned with bells. The winds became still and ceased to blow. All streams and rivers stopped their flow. The sun, the moon, the celestial chariots, the planets, and the stars all stood still. The constellation of Pusha appeared. King Suddhodana's residence became adorned with a net of jewels.
All fires were extinguished. The palace, temples, gateways, and doorways were decorated with tassels of jewels and gems. The doors to the storehouse of cloths and gems appeared wide open. The calls of crows, owls, vultures, wolves, and jackals ceased to be heard. Instead, many delightful sounds were heard. All people stopped their work. The ground became level without any bumps or hollows. All crossroads, junctions, roads, and marketplaces became as even and smooth as the palm of a hand and were beautifully bestrewn with flower petals. All pregnant women birthed their babies with comfort and ease. All the gods in the soft forest revealed half their bodies from among the tree leaves and remained there, bowing. Such were the 32 omens that occurred. Then Mahadevi, due to the magnificence and strength of the Bodhisattva, knew that it was time for her to give birth. During the first watch of the night, she came to King Suddhodana and spoke these words. Lord, please listen to what is on my mind. For a long time now, I have thought about the pleasure grove. If you will not be upset, displeased, or envious, I should quickly go to that pleasure grove. You are also weary from austerities and diligently contemplating the Dharma. I myself have carried a pure being within me for a long time now. The sow, that most wonderful of trees, is now in blossom. O Lord, it is therefore fitting for us to go to the pleasure grove. Spring, that excellent season, is a joyous time for women. The bees are humming and the cuckoos singing. Fresh and sweet, the fragrance of flowers drifts through the air. Please issue an order and let us go there right away. The king heard Mahadevi's words, and then, delighted and elated, he spoke to his retinue. Arrange my horses, elephants, and chariots. Decorate the excellent garden at Lumbini. Quickly prepare 20,000 elephants, dark blue like mountains or storm clouds. Ornament the lordly six-tusked elephants with bells attached to their flanks. Decorate them with gold and gems and cover them with lattices of gold. Quick, harness 20,000 royal steeds, fast as the wind, strong and excellent steeds, with silvery snow-colored tails, manes that are beautifully plaited, and lattices of golden bells hung on their flanks.
Quick, gather 20,000 brave men, heroes who long for the battlefield and combat. Let them brandish sharp weapons, bows and arrows, swords, spears, and lassos, to carefully guard Mahadevi and her retinue. Have Lumbini be strewn with gold and jewels. Adorn all the trees with many types of cloths and jewels. Quick, plant many flowers, like in the gardens of the gods. Arrange all of this, and then swiftly report to me. Hearing this, the retinue immediately arranged all the conveyances and ornamented Lumbini. They then called out, "Victory, victory, long live the king. Your command is fulfilled and all is ready. Please look, O Lord." The sublime Lord of men, with a joyous mind, entered the palace and spoke thus to the women. Those of you to whom I am dear and who would like to bring me joy, follow my command and adorn yourselves. With colorful clothes, beautiful and soft, and fragrant and enchanting perfume, adorn your chests with necklaces of pearls. Today everyone should wear all their ornaments. Bring hundreds of thousands of delightful instruments, hand drums, flutes, lutes, clay drums, and cymbals. Hearing the melodious sound of these instruments, even the gods will be pleased. You make the goddesses similarly joyful. In the supreme chariot, only Mahadevi shall sit. None of the ladies nor the men shall join her. This chariot shall be led by a host of bright young women. No one shall mention anything unpleasant or unfitting. Mahadevi then left her palace and went to the door of the king. When she arrived, the divisions of horses, elephants, chariots, and foot soldiers all called out with a deafening roar, as loud as the waves on a great turbulent ocean.
At this moment, auspiciously, 100,000 bells rang out. The king himself decorated the chariot, and 1,000 gods prepared a divine throne. The 4 precious trees were complete with flowers and leaves. Peacocks, cranes, and swans sounded their delightful calls. Parasols, flags, and banners of all sizes were hoisted. The chariot was covered with a beautiful lattice of tinkling bells and divine cloth. From up in the heavens, celestial maidens looked down at the chariot. They called out in divine melodious tones, offering words of praise. When Maya Devi sat on the lion throne, the earth of the trichilocosm trembled in 6 ways. The gods waved cloths and scattered a rain of flowers. Today at Lumbini, a sublime being is to be born. The 4 guardians of the world led the supreme chariot. Saka himself, Lord of the heaven of the 33, cleared its path. Brahma, going ahead, expelled all untamed creatures. Hundreds of thousands of gods joined their hands and bowed down. The king, with a joyful heart, surveyed what had been prepared, thinking, this child must be the god of gods. When the 4 guardians, Brahma and the gods led by Sakra, make such offerings, he will surely become a Buddha. None of the gods, nor the Nagas, Saka, Brahma, or the guardians of the world, none nor any other being in the trichilocosm could accept such offerings as these, for their heads would burst asunder, on their lives be lost. Yet he, supreme among gods, can accept all offerings. Monks Maya Devi now set forth, surrounded and protected by 84,000 richly ornamented horse chariot drawn chariots, 84,000 richly ornamented elephant drawn chariots, and 84,000 brave, heroic, and handsome foot soldiers wearing excellent and solid armor. She was escorted by 60,000 Sakya maidens. She was guarded by 40,000 elders, youth, and middle-aged men from King Suddhodana Sakya clan. She was also surrounded by 60,000 women from King Suddhodana's retinue who sang songs and played music, bells, and cymbals. Some 84,000 celestial maidens followed her, as did 84,000 Naga maidens, 84,000 Grand Arva maidens, 84,000 Kanara maidens, and 84,000 female demigods. All of them were lavishly ornamented and sang her praise in melodic voices accompanied by music.
All of Lumbini Grove was sprinkled with droplets of perfume water and strewn with celestial flowers. Every tree in that perfect grove had leaves, flowers, and fruits, even though it was out of season. Even the gods had done their best to decorate the forest. They had, in fact, made it appear like the gods' Mishraka's garden. When Maya Devi arrived at Lumbini Grove, she stepped down from her fine chariot. As human and divine maidens encircled her, she wandered from tree to tree and from grove to grove. She looked among all the trees and eventually arrived beneath a very special and exquisite fig tree. Its branches spread out, full of lush leaves and clusters of blossoms, and further adorned with numerous flowers from the realms of both humans and gods. Richly scented cloths of many colors were draped across its branches. It was sparkling with the light of many gems and jewels. Its roots, trunk, branches, and leaves were all adorned with jewels. Its branches were long and spread out spaciously. The ground where the fig tree stood was smooth like the palm of a hand, beautiful and open, and it was full of dark blue grass, the color of a peacock's neck. The earth was pleasant to the touch, like soft kaklindika cloth. This tree had supported the mothers of previous victorious ones, and it had been praised in the poetry of the gods. It was a tree to which the wholesome and peaceful gods of the pure realms would bow down and touch with their heads, including their top knights and diadems. Now the queen and her retinue had arrived at this pure and stainless fig tree. However, at this moment, the Bodhisattva's magnificence and power caused the fig tree itself to bow down and pay homage to him. Mayadevi stretched out her right arm like a flash of lightning appearing in the middle of the sky and grasped a branch of the tree. She auspiciously directed her gaze into the open sky and stretched her body. At that point, 60,000 goddesses from the desire realm approached Mayadevi to assist and venerate her. Such were the miracles that occurred while the Bodhisattva was in his mother's womb. Now, as the 10 months had been completed, he emerged from his mother's right side, fully aware and mindful. In this way, he was unstained by any impurities of the womb, which otherwise are said to stain everyone else. Monks at that time, Shakra, Lord of the gods, and Brahma, Lord of the Saha world, appeared before the Bodhisattva. As they remembered and recognized who he was, they were full of veneration for the Bodhisattva and wrapped him up in divine silk. The temple in which the Bodhisattva had dwelt while in his mother's womb was carried off by Brahma, Lord of the Saha world, and the other gods of the Braha realm up into their realm, where they enshrined the temple in a memorial and made it an object of worship. Thus the Bodhisattva was first received by the gods rather than by any humans.
Bernie? You're muted, Bernie.
Okay. As soon as he was born, the Bodhisattva stepped onto the ground. Wherever his feet touched the ground, a large lotus immediately sprung from the earth. Then the great Naga kings Nanda and Upananda revealed their upper bodies in the skies and produced 2 streams of cool and warm water to rinse the Bodhisattva's body. Sakra, Brahma, the guardians of the world, and many hundreds and thousands of gods then bathed the Bodhisattva in perfumed water and scattered flower petals over him. A parasol of precious gems and 2 yak-tail whisks also appeared from the midair. The Bodhisattva stood on a large lotus and surveyed the 4 directions with his lion's gaze, the gaze of a great being. At that time, the Bodhisattva, with unhindered higher knowledges, which he manifested due to the ripening of previous roots of virtue, saw the entire great trichiliocosm. He saw the tree, all the cities, towns, estates, kingdoms, royal cities, and lands, as well as all gods and humans. He also perfectly knew the minds of all sentient beings and carefully surveyed them, looking to see if there was anyone similar to himself in terms of virtuous conduct, discipline, meditative absorption, or knowledge. However, in the great trichiliocosm, the Bodhisattva did not see anyone like himself. At that point, the Bodhisattva felt a lion-like fearlessness, free of anxiety or apprehension. Without any hesitation or wavering, he reminded himself of his good motivations. Because he had examined the minds of all sentient beings, he now knew their thoughts. Unsupported, he took 7 steps towards the east and declared, I will be the cause of all virtuous practices. Whenever the Bodhisattva took a step, a lotus sprouted forth. He then took 7 steps toward the south and said, I am worthy of all the offerings of the gods and humans. Next, he took 7 steps towards the west, and pausing on the 7th step, he proclaimed these satisfying words in lion-like fashion. I am the supreme being on this earth. This is my last birth, when I shall uproot birth, old age, sickness, and death. He then took 7 steps towards the north and said, I will be supreme among all sentient beings. Next, he took 7 steps downhill, saying, I will subjugate Mara and his army. I will cause great rain clouds of the Dharma to shower down on all hell beings, extinguishing the fires of hell and filling the beings there with happiness. Finally, he took 7 steps uphill, lifted his gaze, and said, all sentient beings will look up to me.
As the Bodhisattva spoke in this way, his words were immediately heard throughout the entire Trikilya cosm. Such was the nature of the foreknowledge that sprang from the ripening of the Bodhisattva's previous actions. Whenever a Bodhisattva takes birth into his final existence, and as he awakens to perfect and complete Buddhahood, various miracles unfold. Monks, at this time, all beings were so delighted that the hairs on their bodies shivered. There was also a terrifying quaking of the earth, which caused the hairs on their bodies to stand on end. The cymbals and musical instruments of gods and humans sounded without being played by anyone. At that time, all the trees in the great Trikilya cosm, whether in season or not, blossomed and bore fruit. From the expanse of pure space, the sound of thunder rang out, and from the cloudless sky, a fine mist of rain showered down ever so gently, mixed with divinely colored flowers, cloths, ornaments, and powdered incense. Deliciously scented breezes blew, delightful and cooling. In all directions there was no darkness, dust, smoke, or mist to be seen, and everything appeared bright and beautiful. Also, from the empty space above, the great melodious and profound sounds of the realm of Brahma were heard. All the light of the sun, the moon, Brahma, Sakra, and the guardians of the world were eclipsed by an otherworldly light of 100,000 colors, which filled the entire great Trikilya cosm and brought pleasure and happiness, both physical and mental, to everyone that it touched. At the very moment when the Bodhisattva was born, all beings became filled with bliss. All types of attachment, anger, delusion, pride, dislike, dejection, fear, greed, jealousy, and stinginess subsided, and everyone abandoned all forms of unwholesome conduct. The illnesses of the sick were cured. The hungry and the thirsty were relieved of their hunger and thirst. The drunk and intoxicated were freed from their intoxication. The mad had their sanity restored. The blind could see. The deaf could hear. The crippled had their capacities restored. The destitute gained wealth. The imprisoned were freed. All ailments and sufferings of those in the hell realms, starting with the hell of ultimate torment, ceased at that moment. The suffering of those born into the animal realm, such as the fear of being eaten by one another, was also pacified. Likewise, the sufferings experienced by beings in the realms of the Lord of Death, such as hunger and thirst, were also pacified. The newborn Bodhisattva had already practiced good conduct for countless trillions of eons, and he possessed great diligence and strength. As such, when he took his first 7 steps, he had already attained the state of reality. Therefore, all the Buddhas, the Blessed Ones, and all the realms and the 10 directions blessed the earth at that spot of Vajra nature, so that it would not be destroyed by his steps. Monks, such was the awesome strength of the newborn Bodhisattva's first 7 steps.
At that time, the entire world was filled with a bright light, and the sounds of singing and dancing were heard. A rain of flowers, powders, incense, garlands, jewels, ornaments, and cloths showered down from innumerable clouds. All beings were filled with perfect joy. In short, when the Bodhisattva, who is more exalted than anyone in all the worlds, came into this world, many inconceivable events took place. Venerable Ananda now stood up from his seat, removed his robe from one shoulder, and kneeled, placing his right knee on the ground. He joined his palms in the direction of the Blessed One, bowed, and addressed these words to him. The Blessed One, the thus gone one, is truly more amazing than anyone else. The Bodhisattva possessed incredible qualities, but how much more so the one who has awakened to perfect and complete Buddhahood. O Blessed One, I therefore take refuge in Lord Buddha 4 times, 5 times, 10 times, 50 times, 100 times, or rather many hundreds of thousands of times. The Blessed One responded to these words from Ananda by proclaiming, in the future, there will be some monks who do not train their bodies and minds, and do not acquaint themselves with discipline and knowledge. Like unskilled children, they will be highly proud, wild, arrogant, unrestrained, distracted, hesitant, doubting, and without trust. They will bring stains on the monastic order and not live like proper monks. When they hear about the Bodhisattva entering his mother's womb in such a pure way, they will not believe it. Instead, they will gather and gossip, saying, listen, all of you, just listen to this nonsense. The Bodhisattva supposedly entered into his mother's womb where he mixed with impure fluids, yet he is said to have had such enjoyments. Moreover, it is said that when he was born, he emerged from his mother's right side without being sullied by any stains of the womb. But how could this be possible? Such fools will not understand that the bodies of those who have engaged in excellent actions are not begotten from unclean fluids. Monks, such sublime beings, enter into and abide in the womb in the finest manner. It is due to their love and compassion for sentient beings that bodhisattvas are born into the world of humans, since gods do not turn the wheel of Dharma. Why is this? Ananda, it is because beings who would otherwise have been discouraged, thinking the Blessed One, the thus gone one, the worthy one, the completely perfect Buddha is a god. We are just human. We are just human beings, so we are not able to achieve that state.
It will not occur to these foolish beings, such thieves of the Dharma, to think, this being is inconceivable and we cannot judge him. Ananda, these future people will also not believe in the Buddha's miracles, let alone the miracles displayed by the thus gone Bodhisattva. Ananda, these foolish beings will be overcome with desire for wealth, respect, and praise. They will sink into filth and be overcome with their lust for honor. In this way, these impertinent beings will abandon the Buddha's teaching. Just consider how much non-virtue they will accumulate. Ananda asked, Blessed One, in the future, will there really be such monks? who reject excellent sutras like this one and who speak poorly of them. Ananda, replied the Blessed One, not only will there be those who reject the sutras and speak poorly of them, there will also be monks who perform many negative deeds and leave aside their obligations as monks. Ananda then asked, Blessed One, please tell me how life will turn out for these wicked beings. What will happen as they move from one life to the next? The Blessed One replied, they will share the fate of those who deny the Buddha's awakening and those who insult and defame the Buddhas, the Blessed Ones of the past, present, and future. Venerable Ananda's hair stood on end as he exclaimed, I pay homage to the Buddha. He then said to the Blessed One, Blessed One, when I hear about the conduct of those wicked beings, it almost makes me faint. Ananda, said the Blessed One, the behavior of such people will not be proper, but base. Ananda, through their improper conduct, these beings will fall into the great hell of incessant pain. Why is this? Ananda, there are some monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen who do not feel inspired when they hear sutras like this one. Instead, they do not trust these sutras, and they reject them. As soon as they die, they will all fall into the great hell of ultimate torment. Ananda, one should never attempt to measure the thus gone ones. Why not? Because, Ananda, the thus gone ones are immeasurably profound, vast, and difficult to judge. Ananda, when some beings hear sutras like this, they become joyful, elated, and full of faith. Those beings obtain something wonderful. Their lives become meaningful, and their humanity serves a purpose. Their conduct is excellent, and they take hold of what is truly essential. They are freed from the three lower realms. They become heirs of the thus gone ones and obtain all they need. Their trust is meaningful, and they will receive their fair share of the provisions of the kingdom. They will trust deeply as noble beings and cut through Mara's snares. They will cross over the wastelands of samsara and remove the thorns of misery. They will reach a place of supreme joy and genuinely take refuge. As appropriate objects for others' generosity, they are worthy recipients of offerings. These beings appear in the world only rarely, and when here they are to be held as proper objects of generosity. Why is that? It is because they have faith in the teachings of the thus gone ones, which go against all worldly conventions.
Ananda, those beings do not possess any inferior forms of roots of virtue. Ananda, those beings are not just companions who befriended me for a few lifetimes only. And why is that? Because, Ananda, some beings are pleased and delighted to hear me, but not to see me. Some, Ananda, are pleased and delighted to see me, but not to hear me. Still others, Ananda, are pleased and delighted both to see me and to hear me. Ananda, whatever the case, when beings are pleased and delighted to see me or hear me, you can be certain that they are friends who have accompanied me for multiple lifetimes. The thus gone one sees them, and the thus gone one will liberate them. They have the same qualities as the thus gone one. They have gone for refuge in the thus gone one. The thus gone one has accepted them. Ananda, even during earlier times when I was practicing the conduct of a bodhisattva, others came to see me, desperate and bound by fear, begging me to protect them from their fears, which I did. So now that I have awakened to perfect and complete Buddhahood, I will certainly do the same. Ananda, strive in faith. The thus gone one urges you thus. Ananda, the task before you has already been completed by the thus gone one. The thus gone one has pulled out the thorn of pride. Ananda, if a person is willing to travel for hundreds of miles just to receive news of a friend and is delighted to hear that news, then how about if they actually meet their friend? Whoever relies on me and generates the roots of virtue will be recognized by the future thus gone ones, the worthy ones, the completely perfect Buddhas, who will think those beings are the old friends of the thus gone ones. They are also our friends. Why is that, Ananda? Or why is that? Ananda, it is because friends please and delight each other. Whoever is dear to one's friend is also dear and delightful to oneself. Therefore, Ananda, have trust and understand it to be so. Develop trust and think, I also entrust myself to the thus gone ones, the worthy ones, the completely perfect Buddhas of the future. They are also my friends. Think like this, and your wishes will be fulfilled. Ananda, think of this example. Consider a man who is strong and well regarded, but has only one son. Now, if that father has many friends, then even if he should pass away, the friends of the Father will still accept the Son and not reject him. Ananda, in the same way, whoever has faith in me, I will accept as my friend. They will take refuge in me. The thus gone one has many friends, and because those friends of the thus gone one speak genuinely and tell no lies, I entrust those friends of the thus gone one to those who speak the truth. The future thus gone ones, the worthy ones, the completely perfect Buddhas. Therefore, Ananda, strive to have faith. That is what I ask of you. Thus, monks, when the Bodhisattva was born, many trillions of goddesses resting in the center of the sky showered divine flowers, incense, garlands, scented oils, cloths, and jewels upon Maya Devi.
On this topic, it is said, at that time, 60,000 goddesses with melodious voices, glowing with virtuous, stainless, pure golden light, resplendent like the sun and moon, arrived at Lumbini, and spoke to Maya Devi. Do not be displeased, but filled with joy. We are your servants. Please tell us what to do, what you wish to be done. We are your capable servants with loving intentions. We beg you to be joyful and abandon all sorrow. Today, Queen, you shall give birth with ease to the sublime physician who will overcome sickness and death. The trees' buds open, and the sal trees blossom. Thousands of gods stand before you, bowing their arms. The earth and the sea tremble in 6 different ways. Thus your Son will be known here and in heaven as the transcendent one. And pure light beautifies everything glowing golden. Hundreds of fine instruments resound from the empty sky without being played. 100,000 pure, clean gods, free from desire, joyfully play homage. Today, the one who will benefit the entire world shall be born. Sakura, Brahma, the guardians of the world, and other gods stand by joyfully and happily with folded hands. The lion-like being with disciplined conduct emerged from Maya Devi's right side. Like a golden mountain glowing with purity, the guide was born. Sakura and Brahma held out their hands, receiving the sage. 100,000 realms trembled and were suffused with light. The beings of the 3 lower realms were joyful, their sufferings freed. 100,000 gods scattered flowers and waved banners.
From the solid earth sprang beautiful lotuses, the nature of Vajra. They appeared auspiciously. I think there's an open mic. Okay. Let me start over. From the solid earth sprang beautiful lotuses, the nature of Vajra. They appeared auspiciously where the guide placed his wheel-marked feet. He took 7 steps and spoke with a melodious voice like Brahma's. I will be a perfect being, a sublime physician who cures old age and death. Brahma and Shakra, the supreme gods, hovered in the center of space. They bathed the body of the god with pure, clean, and fragrant water. 2 Naga kings, dwelling in space, sprouted forth 2 streams of cool and warm water. As well, 100,000 gods bathed the god's body with fragrant water. The guardians of the world, with deep respect, held him in their fine hands. The Trichilocosm, with all its animate and inanimate contents, shook. A dazzling light streamed forth. Even the lower realms were pacified. When the guide of the world was born, all suffering and affliction ceased. Upon the victorious guide of men, the gods showered a cooling rain of flowers. Then the strong and diligent being took 7 steps. Wherever he placed his feet on the ground, a beautiful lotus, adorned with many jewels, sprouted forth from the earth. Thus, having taken 7 steps, with the melodious voice of Brahma, he proclaimed, the sublime physician, dispeller of old age and death, has now arrived. Fearlessly, he looked in all directions and then spoke meaningfully. I am the leader of the world. Supreme in this world, I am its guide. This is my last birth. Saying this, the guide of men smiled. Chakra and the world protectors felt strong faith and bathed the benefactor of the world with the finest scented water. The Naga kings too followed suit, bathing his body with streams of scented water.
10 billion other gods suspended in the sky also cooled his self-arisen body with streams of delightful scented water. They held aloft vast and white parasols and beautiful yak-tail fans. Hovering in space, the gods bathed the body of the leaders of men. One man swiftly related the joyful news to Suddhodana. O king, great fortune, your son has been born, adorned with signs. He will certainly be a universal monarch, the jewel of your family lineage, uniting the victory banners of Jambudvipa under one umbrella. He will have no enemies. Then a second man came and presented himself before Suddhodana. O king, great fortune. Just now, just as the prince has been born into the Sakya clan, there were 25,000 sons born to the Sakya house. All are invincible, strong, and powerful. Yet another man came and said, O king, listen to my joyful news. 800 children, headed by Chanda, have been born to the servants. Kantaka's mare birthed 10,000 foals. Perfect horses, glowing golden, with plaited manes and tails. 20,000 kings from the borderlands came before the king, saying, O king, may you be victorious. May we have come. Now tell us, king, what shall we do? Your majesty, you are the master, and we are the subjects. King, may victory be yours. 20,000 fine elephants adorned with the golden lattices have quickly marched to Kapila Vastu, trumpeting out their cries. Headed by Gupta, 6,000 black spotted calves have been born. As the supreme god is born, so are these other beings. How excellent for the kingdom. Go, king, look upon all that is yours, king of shining merit, as thousands of joyous gods and humans see the qualities of the newborn. They set out for perfect awakening beyond suffering and call out, may all be successful. Monks, at that time of the Bodhisattva's birth, a great show of generosity was instigated. Moreover, 500 children of noble family were born. 10,000 girls, headed by Yasovali, were also born, as well as 800 female servants and 500 male servants, headed by Chanda. Likewise, 10,000 mares and 10,000 colts, headed by Kantaka, were born. Finally, 500 female elephants and 500 male elephants were born following the Bodhisattva's birth. These births were all recorded in registers by King Suddhodana and given to his young son for entertainment.
Through the power of the Bodhisattva and for his enjoyment, a Bodhi tree grew at the center of the 4 billion regions, while a sandalwood tree forest grew at the inner region. Also for the Bodhisattva's enjoyment, 500 parks sprang forth in the area surrounding the city. The entrances to 5,000 treasures became visible as they broke forth from the earth. Thus all of King Suddhodana's intentions were perfectly fulfilled. Then the king wondered, now what shall I name my young son? Well, immediately when my son was born, all of my aims were fulfilled, so I will name him Sarvathasita, fulfiller of all aims. Then King Suddhodana arranged a great naming ceremony and announced the child's name as Sarvathasita. Monks, although the Bodhisattva had now been born, his mother's right side was not torn or damaged, but had returned to its usual state. Moreover, Trita's wells, manifested with flowing waters, and 3 ponds of scented oil sprang forth. Then 5,000 celestial maidens came before the Bodhisattva's mother, bringing fragrant oils perfumed with the scent of celestial perfumes. They wanted to know how the birth had gone and whether she was feeling weary. Likewise, 5,000 celestial maidens, bearing unguents, came before the Bodhisattva's mother and asked how the birth was and whether she was weary. Then 5,000 celestial maidens, bearing vases filled with water scented with celestial perfumes, came before the Bodhisattva's mother and asked how the birth was and whether she was weary. Oops. Next, 5,000 celestial maidens, bearing divine children's clothing, came before the Bodhisattva's mother and asked how the birth was and whether she was weary. Then 5,000 celestial maidens bearing divine children's ornaments came before the Bodhisattva's mother and asked how the birth was and whether she was weary. Finally, 5,000 celestial maidens singing and playing divine instruments came before the Bodhisattva's mother and asked how the birth was and whether she was weary. All of the extremist sages from Jambu-vipa, who possessed the 5 extraordinary abilities, came flying through the sky and arrived before King Sudahana. They called out, "May the king thrive!" Monks, for 7 days following Bodhisattva's birth, he was honored with celestial and human music, respected, revered, and given various offerings in the Lubana Grove, food, drink, and enjoyments
were proffered. The entire Sakya clan gathered, and everyone called out with delight, practiced generosity, engaged in merit, and satisfied the needs of 32,000 priests every day. They gave everything that was desired to whoever desired it. Shakra and Brahma also manifested themselves in the form of young priests within that gathering of priests, and sitting at the head of the line, they sang these verses of auspiciousness. As the lower realms are pacified, as all beings feel joy, he who will establish beings in happiness, the bringer of joy, has been born. As the unclouded lights of the gods, the sun and moon, are outshone and disappear, the light of merit has certainly appeared. The blind can see again, the deaf can hear again, the insane have had their sanity restored. He will become an object of worship for the world. Since, unharmed by negative emotions, the minds of beings are filled with love, it is certain, without a doubt, that he will become worthy of the offerings of 10 million Brahmas. As sal trees blossom, and the earth is even, certainly he will become omniscient, the recipient of offerings of all the world. Since the world is calm, and great lotuses have sprouted forth, certainly the splendorous one will be the protector of the world. Since gentle fragrant breezes, perfumed with divine incense, pacify the illnesses of beings, he will become the king of physicians. As the 100 gods living in the form realm, who are free of desire, join their palms and bow down, he will become worthy of veneration.
Humans can see gods, and gods can see humans, yet they are without animosity toward one another. Thus he will become the great leader. Since all fires have dried out and all flowing rivers are still, and the earth sways gently, he will be the one who sees the truth. Monks, 7 days after the Bodhisattva was born, the time came for Maya Devi to pass away. Upon her death, she was born among the gods in the heaven of the 33. Monks, you may think that it was because of the Bodhisattva that Maya Devi died, but you should not look upon things that way, since she had reached the maximum extent of her lifespan. Monks, 7 days after the bodhisattvas of the past were born, their mothers also died. And why is that? Because once a bodhisattva is born and has grown up, it would destroy his mother's heart if he were to renounce his home. Monks, 7 days earlier, Mayadevi had gone in great pomp from the city of Kapilavatthu to the pleasure grove. However, with a splendor 1 trillion times greater than that, the bodhisattva now entered the city of Kapilavatthu. When he entered, 5,000 vases filled with scented water were carried ahead of him. Likewise, 5,000 maidens carried fans made of peacock feathers walked ahead. 5,000 maidens waving palm fronds preceded them, and farther ahead came 5,000 maidens holding golden vases of scented water, who sprinkled this water upon the path. They were preceded by 5,000 maidens holding various fresh garlands of wildflowers, as well as 5,000 maidens carrying various boxes. Then came 5,000 maidens holding fine jewels and sweeping the path. Farther ahead walked 5,000 maidens carrying beautiful cushions, and 5,000 priests carrying bells and ringing out sounds of auspiciousness. In front of them were 5,000 beautifully decorated elephants. Then came 20,000 horses covered with golden ornaments and full of jewels. Following the Bodhisattva were 80,000 chariots, beautifully outfitted with lattices, golden bells, and with parasols, victory banners, and flags hoisted. Then came 40,000 imposing foot soldiers and heroes wearing strong armor, uncountable billions of gods of the desire and form realms hovering in the sky, made various types of offerings to the Bodhisattva and followed after him. The Bodhisattva himself rode in a chariot, which the gods of the desire realm had decorated with a great array of ornaments. 20,000 celestial maidens with ornate jewelry held up jewel garlands and guided the chariot. Between every 2 of the celestial maidens was a human maiden, and between every 2 human maidens was a celestial maiden. However, because of the power of the Bodhisattva, the celestial girls did not find the smell of the human girls displeasing, nor were the human maidens overwhelmed by the sight of the beautiful celestial maidens.
Monks in the city of Kapilavatthu, 500 Sakyas had constructed 500 homes for the Bodhisattva. When the Bodhisattva entered the city, they stood in front of these houses with their hands folded. Bowing reverently, they invited the Bodhisattva. Sarvastasita, please come here. God of gods, please come here. Pure being, please come here. Sublime captain, please come here. Bringer of pleasure, joy, and rapture, please come here. You who are renowned as being beyond reproach, please come here. All-seeing one, please come here. Peerless one, beyond equal, with your splendid qualities and body adorned with the major and minor signs, please come here. King Siddhartha wanted to make everyone happy, so he took the Bodhisattva into all the houses. In this way, it took 4 months before the Bodhisattva entered the actual residence, the palace known as Display of Gems. Then the eldest of the elders of the Sakya clan gathered to discuss who among their women should be responsible for the upbringing, care, and nurturing of the Bodhisattva. They agreed that it should be a skilled and kind person who could care for him in a loving and altruistic atmosphere. 500 Sakya women came to volunteer, saying, I will care for the prince. Please let me take care of the prince. The eldest male and female Sakyas then argued. All of these women are impetuous young girls who are vain and proud because of their beauty and youth. Such women are incapable of caring for the prince and his needs. However, the prince's maternal aunt, Mahaprajapati Gautami, would be able to raise the prince so that he is happy and well. She will also be able to please King Siddhartha. Since everyone agreed with the suggestion, they encouraged Mahaprajapati Gautami to take on this task. And indeed, Mahaprajapati Gautami raised the prince well. At this time, 32 additional nurses were appointed to serve the Bodhisattva. Of these, 8 would carry him, 8 were nursemaids, 8 were playmates, and 8 were appointed to bathe him.
King Suddhodana then gathered all the Sakyas for a council and asked, Will this prince be a universal monarch, or will he instead depart from here as a renunciant? At that time, the great sage Asita, who had the 5 extraordinary powers, was residing on the slopes of Himavat, the king of mountains, together with his sister's son Naradatta. When the Bodhisattva was born, he saw many amazing, miraculous displays, and he perceived many gods who joyfully hovered in the sky, waving banners and calling out, Buddha. Witnessing this, he thought to himself, excellent, I must see this. With his divine eye, he looked all over Jambudvipa and saw that a prince who had been born to King Sadudana in the city of Kapilavastu. It was a prince who shone with the light of merit, who was worshipped by everyone, and whose body was beautifully adorned with the 32 marks of a great being. He is said to be the young priest Naradatta. Young priest, listen. A jewel has come into this world. In the city of Kapilavastu, in the household of King Suddhodana, the prince has been born. He shines with the light of merit, is worshipped by everyone, and is beautifully adorned with the 32 marks of a great being. If he remains in his palace, he will become a universal monarch who commands the 4 armies. He will be a victorious and pious Dharma king with the necessary strength to govern. He will also have 7 precious possessions, which are the precious wheel, the precious elephant, the precious horse, the precious wife, the precious jewel, the precious steward, and the precious minister. He will beget 1,000 sons, who will all be heroic, brave, handsome, and triumphant. By his innate strength, he will subdue and conquer the entire world and its oceans without using force or weapons, and in a way that accords with the doctrine. In this way, the entire world will be his kingdom. If, however, he leaves his home and goes forth as a renunciant, he will become a thus gone one, a worthy one, a completely perfect Buddha. He will become a teacher and a guide who is independent of others and renowned throughout the world. So come, let us go and see him. Just like the king of swans, the great sage Asita, accompanied by his nephew Naradatta, soared through the sky to the city of Kapilavastu. When he arrived, he concealed his magical powers and entered the city on foot. He went to the palace of King Suddhodana and walked right up to the palace gates, where monks he saw many hundreds of thousands of animals gathered. The sage Asita went to the gatekeeper and told him, Sir, go and tell King Suddhodana that a sage has come to see him.
The gatekeeper went before King Suddhodana with folded hands and said, Your Majesty, there is an old, elderly, and decrepit sage at the gate who says that he wishes to see the king. King Suddhodana had a seat prepared for the sage Asita and said to the gatekeeper, Let the sage enter. The gatekeeper returned from the king's quarters and told the sage Asita to enter the palace. The sage Asita went before King Suddhodana and told him, Great king, may you be victorious. May you be victorious. May you live long. May you rule in accord with the Dharma. King Suddhodana first honored the sage by giving him water to bathe his feet and rinse his mouth. He then very respectfully seated him on a cushion. Once he saw that the sage was sitting comfortably, he respectfully addressed him. Sage, I do not recall having seen you before. Why have you come here? The sage Asita replied to King Suddhodana, Great king, I have come to see the son who was born to you. The king said, Great sage, the child is sleeping now. Please wait for a short while until he wakes. The sage replied, Great king, a great being like this does not sleep long. Great beings like him usually remain awake. Monks, out of affection for the sage Asita, the Bodhisattva now showed signs of having awakened. King Suddhodana carefully lifted Prince Sarvar Siddhartha with both hands and carried him before the sage. Asita, when the sage Asita looked at the Bodhisattva, he saw that this body was wonderfully adorned with the 32 marks and 80 signs of a great being. His body was superior even to that of Sakra, Brahma, and the guardians of the world. It was even more splendorous than hundreds of thousands of suns, and all of its parts were perfectly beautiful. The sage exclaimed, "Oh, an amazing being has been born in this world. An exceptional and amazing being has been born in this world." He stood up from his seat, joined his palms, prostrated to the Bodhisattva's feet, and circumambulated. He then took the Bodhisattva on his lap and remained pensive. He saw that the Bodhisattva's body bore the 32 marks of a great being, and he knew that these marks could only indicate only one of two possibilities. He saw that if the Bodhisattva was to stay in the palace, he would become a universal monarch who commands the 4 armies. He would be a victorious and pious Dharma king with the necessary strength to govern. He would also have the 7 precious possessions of the wheel, the elephant, the horse, the wife, the jewel, the steward, and the minister. He would beget 1,000 sons who would all be heroic, brave, handsome, and triumphant.
By his innate strength, he would subdue and conquer the entire world and its oceans without using force or weapons, and in a way that accords with the doctrine. In this way, the entire world would be his kingdom. On the other hand, if he were to leave his home and go forth as a renunciant, he would become a thus gone one, renowned as the completely perfect Buddha, a peerless leader. As the sage saw this, tears streamed down his face, and he sat there sobbing. Seeing the sage crying, shedding tears and sobbing, the king became afraid and distressed, and he very quickly inquired of the great sage, "Sage, you shed tears, you cry, and you sigh deeply. What is wrong? Is some misfortune to befall the prince?" The great sage Asita replied to the king, "Great king, I am not crying for sake of the prince, and no misfortune will befall him. I cry for myself because, great king, I am elderly, old, and decrepit. Prince Sarvathas, oh my God, I can't say this. Sarvathasida, however, will awaken to perfect and complete Buddhahood and turn the wheel of the unexcelled Dharma in a way that cannot be done by any aesthetic, priest, god, demon, or anybody else who follows worldly teachings. He will teach in a way that is beneficial and brings happiness to the world, including the gods. He will share a teaching of pure conduct, which is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. It will be a teaching with excellent meaning and excellent words. It will be unique, perfect, pure, purifying, and consummate. When those who are bound within the caste system hear his teachings, those who are not free from birth will be liberated. Likewise, those who are afflicted by old age, sickness, death, grief, lamentation, suffering, unhappiness, and irritation will be liberated from old age, sickness, death, grief, lamentation, suffering, unhappiness, and irritation. The rain of the sublime teaching will refresh those who are tormented by the flames of desire, anger, and stupidity. He will lead onto the straight path to nirvana those beings who are veiled by a variety of mistaken views and who have entered mistaken paths. He will free from bondage those who are trapped in the cage and prison of samsara and who are bound by the fetters of disturbing emotions. In those beings who are blinded by darkness, clouded vision, and the cataract of ignorance, he will engender the eye of insight. For those beings who are wounded by the thorn of disturbing emotions, he will pull out that thorn. Great king, an Udambara flower, sometimes, though rarely, blooms in the world. Great king, in the same way, rarely, in many millions of years, a blessed Buddha is born in the world. And the great prince will certainly awaken to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood.
Once he awakens to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood, he will liberate many billions of beings, bringing them across the ocean of samsara and establishing them in immortality. Yet I shall not live to see this jewel of the Buddha. This is why, great king, I cry and sigh so sadly. I will not be able to venerate him, even if I remain healthy. Great king, if you look in our scriptures, you will see the prince Sarvata will not stay at home. The reason is, great king, the prince Sarvata bears the 32 marks of a great being. And what are these marks? Great king, Prince Sarvata has a crown extension. That, great king, is the first mark of a great being found on Prince Sarvata. Great king, Prince Sarvata, hair is deep blue like the neck of a peacock or coal powder and curls to the right. His forehead is even. Great king, at the place between Sarvata's eyebrows, there is a ringlet of hair the color of snow or silver. Great king, Prince Sarvata's eyelashes are like those of a bull. His eyes are deep blue color. He has 40 teeth. He has even teeth. His teeth are without gaps between them. His teeth are perfectly white. Great king, Prince Sarvata has the voice of Brahma. His experience of taste is unexcelled. His tongue is very long and slender. His jaw is like that of a lion. His shoulders are well rounded. 7 of his body parts are well rounded. His chest is broad. His skin is smooth and golden. When standing up straight, his hands reach his knees. His torso is like that of a lion. Great King Prince Sarvata arm span and height are identical like the banyan tree. Each of his hairs grows individually and their tips curl to the right and upward. His private parts are well sheathed. His thighs are well rounded. His calves are like those of a black antelope, the king of deer. His fingers are long. His heels are broad. His arches are high. His palms and the soles of his feet are soft. His fingers and toes are webbed. Great King, on the palms of his long-fingered hands and on the side soles of his long-toed feet, there are beautiful thousand-spoked wheels with both center and rim. Great King Prince Sarvata has even and well-placed feet. Great King Prince Sarvata possesses these 32 marks of a great being. Great King, marks of this time are not found on the body of a universal monarch. They are the marks found on the body of a bodhisattva. Great King, the body of Prince Sarvata is adorned with 80 minor marks. Because he has these signs, Prince Sarvata will not stay at home, but will certainly develop renunciation and depart from his home. Great King, what are these 80 minor marks? Well, Great King, and somebody else can recite the 80 minor marks.
Prince Sarvata fingernails are rounded, copper colored, and glossy. His fingers, 4. His fingers and toes are rounded. 5. Long. 6. Well proportioned. 7. His veins are not visible. 8. His ankle bones are not visible. 9. His joints are not visible. 10. His feet are even, rather uneven. 11. His heels are broad. Great King. 12. Prince Sarvata has markings on his hands that are even. 13. Clear. 14. Deep. 15. Straight. And 16. Well arranged. 17. His lips are red like bimba fruit. His voice is not loud. 19, his tongue is supple, soft, and copper colored. 20, his voice is melodious, like the trumpeting of an elephant or the roll of thunder. Moreover, 21, his arms are long. 22, he's excellently clean. 23, his body is soft. 24, his body is not subject to fear or hesitancy. 25, his body is well proportioned. 26, heroic. 27, beautiful. And 28, well composed. 29, his kneecaps are broad, large, and well developed. Great king. 30, Prince Sarvasiddha's body is rounded. 31, very smooth. 32, straight. And 33, well structured. 34, his navel is deep. 35, not crooked. And 36, tapering. 37, like a sage, he is very pure in his conduct. 38, he is exceedingly attractive. 39, of pure appearance. And 40, shines with a light that dispels all darkness. Great king. 41, Prince Sarvasiddha moves with the serene gait of an elephant. 42, the stride of a lion. 43, the steep of a great bull. 44, the swoop of a swan. 45, he steps always to make beautiful circles to the right. 46, his sides are rounded. 47, well proportioned. And 48, straight. 49, his waist is slight like the curve of a bow. 50, his body is free of any blemishes or dark spots. Great king. 51, Prince Sarvasiddha has rounded canines. 52, his canines are sharp and well spaced. 53, his nose is elegantly high. 54, his eyes are clear. 55, stainless. 56, warm. 57, elongated. 58, large. And 59, resemble blue lotuses. Great king. Prince Sarvasiddha has 60 even eyebrows that are 61 thick, 62 dark, 65 continuous, and 64 tapered. 65, his cheeks are plump. 66, even. 67, unblemished and free from. 68, free from the flush of aggression. 69, his sense organs are clearly apparent. Great king. 70, Prince Sarvasiddha has a perfect tuft of hair between his brows. 71, his face and forehead are proportional. 72, his head is large. 73, his hair is black. 74, even. 75, fragrant. 76, soft. 77, well kempt. 78, well arranged. And 79, curly. Great king. 80, Prince Sarvasiddha has hair that curls in the forms of the great endless knot, the mark of auspiciousness, the mark of internal happiness, and the mark of prosperity. Great king. Prince Sarvasiddha has all these 80 marks. Great king, these 80 marks that Prince Sarvasiddha bears mean that Prince Sarvasiddha will not remain in his home, but will certainly leave the palace in order to live the life of a renunciant.
When King Suddhodana heard that the sage Asita's prophecy about the prince, he rejoiced and felt satisfied, elated, joyful, and blissful. He rose from his seat, prostrated at the feet of the Bodhisattva, and spoke this verse. All the gods prostrate to you. The sages give you offerings, and the entire world worships you. So I will also offer you my homage. And so, monks, King Suddhodana satisfied the sage Asita and his nephew Naradatta appropriately with a banquet, offered them with fine garments, and circumambulated them. Then the great sage Asita returned to his own abode by magically flying through the air. Once there, the great sage Asita told the young priest, Naradatta, when you hear that a Buddha has appeared in this world, you must go immediately to see him and take ordination with that teacher. This will have a long-lasting purpose and bring you benefit and happiness. On this topic, it is said, seeing the host of gods, suspended in space, calling out Buddha, the divine sage Asita, who lived on the mountain slopes, was filled with joy. What is this word, Buddha, which brings such joy to all beings? It fills my body with pleasure, my mind with joy, and brings supreme peace. Is he a god, a demigod, a Garuda, a Kinara, this Buddha? That word, which I never heard before, brings joy and trust. He looked with divine wisdom over the 10 directions, mountains, earth, and oceans, and looking again saw many amazing sights on the earth, mountains, and oceans. This beautiful light glows brilliantly, bringing physical bliss, as coral shoots spring forth on the mountaintops. The trees burst into blossom and are laden with fruits. It is clear that a sublime jewel will soon appear in the 3 realms. The earth appears even and stainless, like the palm of a hand. The gods joyfully wave banners in midair. Marvelous gems float in the abode of the ocean's Naga king. Certainly a victorious jewel, a source of the doctrine, will appear in Jambudvipa. The lower realms are pacified, suffering removed, and beings find joy. Hosts of devas move about the sky with delight as the pleasing and melodious songs of the gods resound. These are certainly signs that here in the 3 realms a jewel will appear.
Here in Jambudvipa, the sage Asita looked with the divine eye to the city of Kapilavastu, King Suddhodama's sublime city. There he saw a person born who was as strong as Narayana, with signs and splendorous merit. He rejoiced, his mind became joyful, and he gained strength. Amazed, he went quickly with his disciple and arrived at the gate of Kapilavastu, the king's supreme city, where he saw many trillions of living beings thronging. He asked the gatekeepers to quickly say that a sage was at the gate. The gatekeeper hurriedly entered the palace and told the king, "Your Majesty, there is an old sage, a great ascetic, at the palace gates. That supreme sage asks to enter the king's palace. Great king, shall I let him in or not? Please let me know." The king made a seat for the sage and said, "Go and bring him here." When the sage Asita heard the doorman's words, he was happy and joyful, like a thirsty man wishes for cool water, or one tormented by hunger hopes for food. The sublime sage was overjoyed at the prospect of seeing this excellent being. He joyously claimed, "King, may you be victorious and live long." With these pleasing words, and with calm mind and senses, he took his seat. The king respectfully addressed the sage with these words, "Please tell me, sage, why have you come to the royal palace?" "A son was born to you, supreme, transcendent, and splendorous, ornamented by 32 excellent signs with the power of Narayana. Your Majesty, I would be delighted to see your son, Savarthasita. That is why I have come here, O king. I have no other wish." "Excellent. You are welcome. Tired or not, I am delighted to see you. The boon granting prince is sleeping, so this is not the time to see him. Wait a while, and you will see the perfect one, who is like a stainless full moon adorned with a crown of stars." When the supreme guide awoke, glowing like the full moon, the king took that blazing being, whose light outshone the sun, onto his lap. "Sage, behold the golden one, worshipped by gods and humans." The sage Asita saw his beautiful feet, ornamented by the mark of wheels.
Then the sage stood up, joined his palms, and prostrated to the prince's feet. The learned sage held the child and gazed upon him deep in thought. He saw the child with strength and Narayana, ornamented by supreme marks. Skilled in the Vedas and commentaries, the sage shook his head as he saw 2 possibilities. The child would be a powerful universal monarch or a Buddha, supreme in the world. Terribly sad in body and mind, the sage shed tears and sighed deeply. The supreme king became afraid and asked, "Why does the priest weep? Does the sage Asita see some obstacle to my Sarvastasita? O sage, why do you weep? Tell me the truth. What good or evil do you see?" "There is no misfortune or obstacle for your son, Sarvastasita. I myself, an old am old and infirm, and thus I grieve for myself. This prince will be a Buddha, revered by the world, who will teach the genuine doctrine. And because I will not see this delightful sight, I cry. Your Majesty, his stainless body is marked by 32 excellent signs. Thus, he has only one of two destinies and no third choice. Either he will be a universal monarch or he will be a Buddha, supreme on this earth. Yet, since he will not desire sense pleasures, he will certainly become a Buddha. Hearing the sage's prophecy, the king was delighted and overjoyed. He stood up, joined his palms, and prostrated at the prince's feet. Powerful one, the gods worship you, the sages praise you. Supreme leader of all beings in the three realms, I prostrate to you. The sage was delighted and spoke to his nephew. Listen to my instructions. When this prince awakens as a Buddha and turns the wheel of Dharma, you must immediately take ordination and follow the able one, and then you shall attain nirvana.
The sublime sage prostrated at the prince's feet, circled him, and told the king, "You have very good fortune to have a son like this. He will satisfy the world with its gods and humans through the doctrine." The great sage then left Kapilavastu and returned to his hermitage. Monks, as soon as the Bodhisattva was born, the god Mahasvara called out to the gods of the pure abodes, "Friends, there is a Bodhisattva, a great being, who has excellently and diligently practiced purification, generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, concentration, knowledge, methods, studies, conduct, ascetic practices, and austerities for countless trillions of eons. He has great love, great compassion, and great joy, and is possessed of a noble mind by virtue of its equanimity. He strives for the benefit of all beings and is shielded by the armor of diligence. He has appeared out of the roots of virtue that were brought about by previous Buddhas. He is adorned with the marks of 100 merits and is full of a determined resolve. He conquers the enemy's army and has a joyful and excellent mind without stains. He bears the crowning banner of a great wisdom. He uproots the strength of the demons. He is the great leader of the Trichilakasm and is worshipped by gods and humans. He has performed great sacrifices and possesses an exceedingly excellent accumulation of merit. Since he has his mind set on deliverance, he will uproot birth, old age, and death. He is well born and will bring beings to awakening. Born into the family of King Ixvaku, he has come to the world of humans. He will soon awaken to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood. Let us go and pay homage to him, serve him, respect him, and praise him. The other gods who are overcome by their pride will see us paying homage to the Bodhisattva, and they will cast aside their pride, haughtiness, and arrogance. They will also go to pay homage, service, and respect the Bodhisattva. This will bring lasting purpose, benefit, and happiness to those gods until they attain immortality. The might and prosperity of King Suddhodana will become renowned. Let us make a true prophecy about the Bodhisattva and then return." After the god Mahasvara had said this, he took off for the palace of King Suddhodana, surrounded by 1,200,000 gods, bathing the entire city of Kapilavastu in light. The gatekeeper informed the king of their arrival, and Mahasvara entered the palace with the king's permission. He prostrated, touching his head to the Bodhisattva's feet, drew his robe over his shoulder, and circled the Bodhisattva many hundreds of thousands of times. He then took the Bodhisattva onto his lap and spoke these joyful words to King Suddhodana. "Great king, you should be supremely delighted. The reason, great king, is that the Bodhisattva's body is beautifully ornamented with the major and minor marks of a great being, and he outshines the world of gods, humans, and demigods with his color, magnificence, renown, and glory. Great king, it is therefore certain that the Bodhisattva will awaken to unexcelled, perfect, and complete Buddhahood." Monks, in this way, the god Mahasvara, together with the many gods of the pure realms, made offerings to the Bodhisattva and showed him great respect. As they had now given the true prophecy, they returned to their own abodes.
On this topic, it is said, Learning of the birth of he who has crossed the ocean of qualities, Mahesvara, overjoyed, spoke to the gods. For many millions of eons, it is so rare even to hear of this. So come, let us go and worship the Lord of men. Thus all the 12,000 pure gods beautifully ornamented with jeweled crowns, excellently comported, and with their lovely hair flowing, quickly traveled to the supreme city of Kalpilvatsu and stood before the king's gate. They spoke politely to the gatekeeper. Go to the palace and make our arrival known to the king. The gatekeeper went inside as they asked, joined his palms, and spoke to the king. Your Majesty, may you always be victorious and live long. Pure luminous beings with great merit stand by your door, beautifully ornamented with jeweled crowns and excellent conduct. Their faces are like the full moon, their luster is pure like that of the clear moon. King, wherever they go, they cast no shadow. When they walk, their steps make no sound. When they step on the earth, they raise no dust, and beings never tire of gazing upon them. Their bodies radiate great clear light. Their words are beautiful, those of humans cannot compare. Their speech is profound, soft, and melodious. These are not humans. I think they must be gods.
They wait respectfully, each of them holding in his hands choicest flowers, garlands, unguents, and silk. King is certain that they have come to see and worship the prince, the god of gods. The king, hearing these words, was delighted and said, go invite them all into the palace. The qualities and behavior you have described, such miracles are not made by humans. The gatekeeper joined his palms and spoke to the gods. The king invites you all to come inside. The gods with garlands in their arms were overjoyed and entered the king's palace, which was similar to the god realm. Seeing these supreme gods enter his palace, the king rose from his seat and joined his palms. These thrones with jeweled legs have been arranged here. Please, with your great benevolence, kindly take your seats. Then, without pride or haughtiness, the gods took their seats. King, please listen to our reasons for coming here. A child whose body is pure and who has great merits has been born to you. We wish to see his honored person. We know the significance of excellent marks. We know what they mean, their course and their application. Thus, sublime king, do not feel sad. We wish to see the one who has these many marks. The king, surrounded by the women of the palace, was filled with joy, and he took the prince, blazing like a fire, on his lap. The supreme gods with flowing hair approached. Just when they emerged from the door, the whole trichilocosm trembled. When the supreme god saw the leader's feet and nails, copper-colored, stainless, pure and majestic, those gods with their flowing hair quickly stood and prostrated, placing their hands at the feet of the one with stainless brilliance. Because of these marks and the glory that they show, as well as the splendor of merit and the unseen crown of his head.
And also because of the light that shines from the tuft of hair on his forehead, it is certain that he will conquer Mara and find awakening. The gods praised the prince, saying, he is free from the darkness of disturbing emotions. He is full of qualities and is able to see things just as they are. This jewel among men has finally appeared, the one who has conquered the enemies of birth, old age, death, and disturbing emotions. Stirred by objects of desire and imagination, 3 fires are born, setting these 3 existences ablaze and causing deep torment. Yet you, a heroic cloud of Dharma, will aid the tormented by filling the trichiliocosm with the rain of the nectar of immortality, to calm the suffering of negative emotions. With a loving voice and soft, compassionate speech, you will call out with the delightful strains of Brahma's voice, heard in all three realms and by all beings. Blessed One, quickly call out with the great speech of a Buddha. You will conquer the evil one, hordes of extremists and with mistaken view, who are caught up in worldly desire and who remain on the path of existence. Hearing your doctrine of emptiness and interdependent causality, they will scatter like jackals before a lion. You clear away the obscuration of ignorance, the haze of the great disturbing emotions. You appear and manifest for the sake of beings. You, the shining light of wisdom, the light of insight, the light rays of insight, may you dispel the great darkness of all beings with your gaze. When such an amazing pure being as this appears, gods and humans acquire a tremendous boon. This precious being who grants awakening will cut the path to the lower realms and open the paths to the gods. The gods strewed a rain of divine flowers over Kapilavastu. Then they circled and praised the Bodhisattva, calling out, "This is the Buddha, the excellent Buddha," before departing joyfully up through the sky. Thus concludes the 7th chapter on the birth. That's it for this
Thank you.
chapter.
Would anyone like to begin the discussion? We don't have long, only about 15 minutes, but
I-
there's time.
I will raise my skeptic's voice and make one point. Asita talked about the qualities of the Buddha's teeth, but as everybody know, children are born toothless. So how could he remark on the qualities of the Buddha's teeth? So
Details, details, details.
Also, there's the idea of the webbed fingers and toes, and then the images of Buddha with unwebbed fingers. What is, that's very interesting description of a characteristic of a human is webbed feet and toes.
I was told that those webs are not webs of flesh, they're webs of light by a monk. So I make of that what you will. Sort of like,
All right. That's
sort of like
a good explanation.
Lance, questions I had were about, so when she gave birth, is there any records that she actually died? She did die within 7 days, Maya
Yes,
Deva?
yes,
Okay.
it's here. Excuse me 1 second, I'll tell you in just a moment. Just a moment.
I can find it. I don't want to, I can look at it in the notation.
No, it's fine, it's fine. It's
And while you're looking, as we're reading, Bernie, I chuckle because I was privately reading this each morning, and I kept going back to your analogy of the icing, the cake, wedding cake analogies, where you're like they're laying it on thick. So I appreciate when you said that 2 weeks ago because it helps me just stay more focused and not go off on it in my brain, like get too distracted by their literary or their symbolism. So
it's the style of poetry in that period is just to lay on metaphor upon metaphor upon metaphor, and it's
yeah.
so it's like I say, it's a wedding cake.
If you're not careful, your mind can get distracted by it, where you lose focus on the substance and the intentionality of what you're reading. So
7.85 is the part where Maya Devi passes.
I know, I knew she passed, but I was curious, is there historical records and other documentation systems that confirm that?
Only in the sutras.
Well,
Got
there's no independent record of the Buddha's life that I'm aware of.
It's only
Okay.
in the sutras.
Only in the sutras, and you have that same teaching in other sutras. It's a common belief among all Buddhists in all Buddhist scriptures, but there's no independent record of the Buddha's life outside of the Buddhist scriptures. So you can't say. Part of the reason why I think, although I'm not sure, when the Buddha was born, writing still had not been introduced into India. When Buddha taught when the first sutras were taught, they were recited. Monks would memorize the scriptures and then they would recite them. I think until around the time of King Ashoka, there really was not any written language in India. I could be wrong. Somebody look that up and see if I'm wrong, but so you're not going to find an independent historical record of anybody in this period of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've seen it and I can't remember the reference, but it was, that they didn't have at that point. They didn't have, and he spoke Pali, and they didn't have a Pali script. Yeah, it's funny because this is just me, and I know it's being like a female thing. But the first time I heard that story, and I still think about it, it just sounds like, did she have a cesarean section and then she died from an infection afterwards? And that just always, like, sometimes there's a kernel of truth to it. And, when they're saying she died, irrespective of how he was born, it's not uncommon at all that women would die in childbirth or soon after childbirth just because of how dangerous it is. And this was her first child. Other than that, the only other thing I want to say is just that, is for us, it's this giant schism between Hinduism, which was going along in a certain set of directions, and then Buddhism, which, seems like, in retrospect, it seems like it capped off like a glacier, and it didn't, because the sutra just completely makes that point. It's just in the context of, everybody was waiting for this anyway. The idea of a Buddha, this amazing being who is leading path, people away from suffering, was a very Hindu thing, right? That's not how he was seen, as forming something very different, but just sort of fulfilling, what Hinduism is about, because it is also, moving through multiple states to a greater state of purity. It's just that he was able to make that leap. And it was also interesting, I guess I do have another point. It was interesting in that they kind of had to justify why he was born, sort of, because, Hindu gods and goddesses and those great forces, they have these they come into being in this very pure way. And you would have to say, okay, well, if he's so great, there are people who are going to look at that and say, oh, he was born out of a human body into a human body. And so how can he be that great? So that
The thing that was important to me was how they were stressing, the bodhisattva, and how, he was the manifestation of his purity from prior lives. And as all this is allegory to our own lives, does this inspire us to get our life together with the prospect that, we're going to be born again, whether it's in this life, as we've talked about many times through our meditations and so on, or is there a literal rebirth, going into another body or something like that? But, does it behoove us to get our purity, in check, correct, and so on? So I think that's a hidden, not too hidden message that is a thread that goes throughout all of this.
Lance, so after we finish this first book you've given us, how many more? Because you and I had talked about this. This is just like 10% of what there is in the sutras, right?
Well, there's two more books. So I think what I'd like to do is to print up the next two books. But during the time that we're printing them, is to view the mythos
Oh,
videos.
oh, that would be so cool.
So, in other words, it'll take us another week or 2 weeks to complete this book. And then in the rest of July and August, shift over to this film that I want to share with everybody from I can't think of his name now. It just slipped my mind.
Daniel, is it Daniel?
No,
Joseph Campbell, maybe?
Joseph Campbell. Yes, thank you. The Joseph Campbell film that is really, really great. It's 5 hours, and so we would spend several meetings watching that film. We watch it in Noble Film on Friday nights, but it's too important for you all not to see. So we'll show it on Monday nights, during the time that we print up and send out these books, so that in the fall we'll get back to continuing the Lalitavistara. That's my thought.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Okay, Kunga, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah. So there is the sutra itself that we just read does actually address some of these ideas about whether or not we should believe what's written. 7.42, Ananda asked, Blessed One, in the future, will there really be such monks who reject excellent sutras like this one, and who speak poorly of them? Ananda replied, the Blessed One, not only will there be those who reject the sutras and speak poorly of them, there will also be monks who perform many negative deeds and leave aside their obligations as monks. And then farther down on 744, it says, Ananda, there are some monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen who do not feel inspired when they hear sutras like this one. Instead, they do not trust these sutras and they reject them. As soon as they die, they will all fall into the great hell of ultimate torment. Ananda, one should never attempt to measure the thus gone ones. Why not? Because, Ananda, the thus gone ones are immeasurably profound, vast, and difficult to judge. So, I think the controversy of whether or not what was being written was going to be believed was they were aware of that at the time because it's included in the conversation, the dialogue. I thought that was interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's a very good point to ponder. Did you enjoy this?
I enjoy reading it as a group with you guys because I read it privately and silently each morning, like one page at a time. It's nice to hear other people recite it out loud because then it gives me another perspective as a listener. So thank you all for contributing.
Okay. All right, well, very good. And unless somebody has something that you would like to share, we'll do a dedication.
Is the Joseph Campbell movie, is that The Power of Myth, the interview with Bill Moyers?
No, it's his lectures on, it's called Mythos 2.
Has anyone else seen it besides Debbie and Lance?
I haven't seen it. It sounds exciting though.
It's really great.
A long time ago, I saw what I think Kunga is referring to with the Bill Moyer interviews. I don't think I've seen what you all are talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a number of things by Joseph Campbell, this being one of them, and it's really, really great.
Important. It is. It's important stuff.
It'll help put things into a perspective that is for 21st century minds, better than I could do it anyway. So, all right. Well, then, thank you all very much for sharing this, and may it all come to fruition, that you all become Buddhas born on pistils of lotuses. The next time you sit down on the lotus cushion, may you be reborn with the light of the Buddha. So the dedication, we'll do the dedication by Lord Jigten Sumgun. So on page 36 and 37 of the prayer books. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all beings, sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shavaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings from my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very, very much. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Not everyone. Good night, Ness.
See you again
See you
soon.
next week.